Um, skipping that. So, on the topic of classics, I got this book because it's like your classic textbook. I'm not showing the cover of this book. Your classic textbook case of a unreliable narrator, to which I am now trying to decide if I know what an unreliable narrator was, because I feel like Humbert is a very reliable narrator. Uh, he's just not a good person. I don't feel like he was lying to me at all. He's just not a good person. He kidnaps a child. Like, what's unreliable about his account? Because if I'm supposed to be feeling bad for him, he didn't do a very good job of it. Like, he kidnapped the child. Lots of people have read Lolita like in school or something like that, and it's like, what? I don't, I don't. Ew. I don't understand. Um, Yeah. Do note that this book reads like a memoir. He kept using the word nymphette, which actively makes me want to commit the unalive. Um, yeah. Apparently, none of the girls before Dolores were his quote unquote Lolita. Uh, I hate that term. I'm not even really sure what it means anymore because I associate it with this book. But if I'm not mistaken, it's also just a style of dress. But it might not be, and maybe that was an offensive thing to say, but I don't know because I've tried to Google it and I just end up with this book. I don't know. Um, yeah, he doesn't meet Dolores until page 40, and she's like 12. And don't get me wrong, the whole point is that he likes children, which is disgusting. But like, I don't understand what's unreliable about this narrator. He's a disgusting individual, and I believe him. He's a terrible person. Maybe I just didn't read far enough, and the self depreciation starts later. But like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. I'm sitting on my legs, and now my legs hurt, so I have to adjust so that my legs don't fall off. Yeah. Um, I don't understand what's unreliable about this. He's perfectly creepy and describes it just how I imagine a creepy man would, trying to I didn't even feel like he was trying to justify it. He was just being creepy. Like, I don't know. Oh, I had some things. This book is taught, or at least it used to be. I don't know if it still is. This book was at one point taught in high schools, which is absolutely wild to me. Um, the how is he unreliable thing. Maybe I also posited that maybe I have no sympathy for him because I know he's supposed to be unreliable. So now I'm just like looking for it, and therefore I don't feel like he's unreliable. I feel there's no sense of tragedy to it, you know? There was a book that I read, or a play that we read when I was in college called "'Tis Pity She's a Whore," and that book is about incest, but there's a level of tragedy to it. Like the two main characters end up dead by the end of the book because the brother goes insane. Like there's a sense of tragedy to it, and even the way it's described, there's a sense of tragedy to it. There's no sense of tragedy to it in this book. It just is what it is, and like why were we letting high schoolers read this? But God forbid they find out about gay people? Like, um, I also love how it's the 50th anniversary edition with no footnotes. This is a novel that could have benefited from footnotes. Um, Also, I think there needs to be more focus on the first part of the book. Lots of people spend a lot of time on the rest of the book, and like I get it, the rest of the book is pretty much like 100 some pages. I understand that, but like that part of the book before Dolores, I think is really insightful into his character and stuff. How is he unreliable? I don't. We're gonna talk about a better book now, and it's called The Warden. I actually met this author when when I went to Barnes Nobel one time, he was standing there with his book, and I asked him what it was, and he signed my book for me, which was really nice of him to do. He also gave me some tips about how to publish your book because publishing can be scary, and I also just kind of didn't know how, so that was nice of him to do. And I told him I would send him this review if I liked his book because he said that there are some people who send bad reviews of books to the authors. And like, while I try to maintain the fact that this is my opinion and nothing I say should be taken objectively, like, why would you send an author a bad review of a book? Like, that's so rude. Um, but no, I really like this book. And it's a shame that I'm gonna have to send him this video, and it's in the second half of the video where I talk about Lolita for like 3.5 minutes. Mm. Anyway, um, because I like it, I don't want to share too much about the book. But basically, there's like a magic person who I didn't read it. I didn't post these videos in a timely manner from when I read the books. But there is a magic person. Their name is Alice. Alice. Alice? Yeah. She like ends up in like this backwater little town where she has to like protect people. They don't like her. But she's like doing her best. She never gives up, which is really nice. I thought that was really nice. Because she doesn't like she complains, but like she doesn't she complains, but it's not like in like a whiny sort of matter. It's in like you have legitimate complaints here because you're only trying to help people and you haven't done anything to be rude to them, but they still reject you. But they like actively need you to protect them because if you don't, they'll probably get raided by a traveling mercenary band if there's a big enough one. So yeah, I like that. He also apparently also when you publish books, they want to know what it's similar to, and he said that the people said it was like Twin Peaks. Never seen Twin Peaks. Do not know if this is. I don't know. There's going to be a second one, so I'm glad I at least got this video out before you wrote the second one. Um, when's it coming out, dude? What Barnes and Noble are you gonna be at? I'll be there. As long as you're not across that godforsaken bridge, I'll be there. What Barnes and Noble are you gonna be at? I want you to sign that one too. um, yeah. Oh, I had a better comparison, but I guess you can't put this on a book because it doesn't really make any sense. In A Song of Ice and Fire, if you specifically the books, not the show, if you like John's chapters, you will like this book. And I like John as a character. I like John's chapters, so I like this book. But I feel like that's the closest thing to it. It seems because I've never seen Twin Peaks, so I can't verify or deny that comparison. But because like John lives on the wall and he doesn't really want to be there, and people like he wants to be there, but he also doesn't, and like the people there don't really want him there either, but he's here, and they all have to deal with each other, and it turns out that he's actually really great for being on the wall, which is kind of what the plot of this book is. They don't want her there. She hasn't given up, and then she ends up being really great for it. And she actually discovers like quite the mystery going on here, and like there's a guy who's like a wizard, I guess, who like steals some of her stuff, I think is what happened. And yeah, I think I think this is a good book. Go buy the book. But I will say that the one thing I didn't like was the constant anger she expresses at being seen as a woman because she's the first woman to do her job. So I don't understand why she's surprised that people are surprised to see her. Yeah. I'm just gonna cover these next two books really quickly so I can go over Zeron's book by itself. No offense, dude. I just that was how it ended up being. Um, Hooked by A.C. Wise and The Monsters We Defy were not for me. I think when it comes to the Peter Pan books, I think I want one where Peter is the villain. So I might end up writing a book like that because I want Peter to be the problem. Um, and then just for like The Monsters We Defy, there's just not enough fantasy in it. It's very urban fantasy, but like a lot more urban than fantasy. And yeah, I don't like that. Uh, yeah, so by the Warden. It's a good book.